Can everybody hear me out there? Okay. All right. Well, welcome. My name is Musho, and I am a student teacher at the Village Zendo, and I also lead the Catskill Zen Circle here in Catskill, New York, where I live. Let's see, I want to see if I can see everybody here. Can I switch to the gallery? Yeah. Tonight, I've heard, is newcomers night. Are there any newcomers about that I can see out there? Yeah, I see you out there in the Zendo, newcomer. Thank you so much. I hope you will find your practice here and we'll try to make it comfortable, although it is hard practice. And I think we understand that. But what would we do without newcomers, really? Just be a bunch of gray-haired people sitting around in a room. So thank you so much, newcomers. So tonight I'm giving my talk on September 11th. I often wondered over the years if the wheels would shift so that my talk would actually be on September 11th, and that has happened. So this is a talk on the anniversary, the 24th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. And my talk tonight is called The End of 9/11. Along with all beings, may 9/11 end forever. Anyone who was in New York City that day has a story to tell, a story of chaos and fear, mostly. I happened to be walking downtown from my place where I lived in Soho. I was walking downtown to attend jury duty. And I looked up just a bit after the first plane had hit the first tower. It was certainly a bad day for New York City. But actually, it was only one day. If you live in Gaza or in the Ukraine, it's 9/11 every day. And so it is in Myanmar and Sudan and many other places in our world right now. It's 9/11 for those people. Can you imagine that? 9/11 every day. But that's what's happening. I see 9/11 as a cycle, not just the one day, because it happens over and over again. It's always a violent confrontation between two opposing forces. On one side, there's usually a powerful, arrogant, and oppressive nation. And on the other side, an angry, oppressed opposition who become fighters out of complete desperation, usually. And both sides feel totally justified in their violence. Extreme violence, actually. I'm going to say that the whole point of our Zen practice is to end 9/11, to make sure that it never happens again anywhere forever. And this will require effort beyond effort. Only with effort beyond effort can we stop the revenge. Revenge is such a bad idea. It never works. We have to put an end to it. With effort beyond effort, fight greed, anger, and ignorance. Those are the three poisons as we know them. With effort beyond effort, to explore the causes and conditions, right? To look into what causes these things to happen. That takes effort beyond effort, but it's so important. With effort beyond effort, to bring about generosity, compassion, and wisdom. Those are the opposites of greed, anger, and ignorance. And so much of our practice is about building those for ourselves and everyone. With effort beyond effort to see our own non-separation with all that is happening in our beautiful, violent world. Non-separation with all these things. Last week, Shinryu Roshi gave a talk, and he mentioned a line from a poem by Zen master Ryokan. Ryokan says, "Look deep inside if you want to understand this tragedy." It's so perfect and true. Look deep inside if you want to understand 9/11. Also, as I was working on this, I came across a quote by author and Buddhist teacher Stephen Batchelor. And the quote was from a recent interview in Tricycle magazine. And I'll read it to you. Just a short quote, but Stephen Batchelor says, "I would argue that imagination is crucial to any kind of ethical act. If we cannot imagine the consequences of our actions and our thoughts and our words, if we cannot imagine how the other person we're speaking with or relating to will feel about what we're going to say or do, if we cannot imagine a kind of future world for all our grandchildren, we are not going to be motivated to do anything about improving our behavior now." I think that's so true. And I was so glad to think about the imagination that's required, because we have to imagine a world without 9/11s happening over and over again. Our mandate comes from Shakyamuni Buddha himself and all the successive teachers, and it's to end suffering, right? That's what they've asked us to do. And I know, it's really difficult for me and probably anyone to imagine a world without suffering at all, without any suffering. But I think I can imagine a world without the cycle of violence of 9/11. Wouldn't that be possible? Imagination is absolutely required to end 9/11. Tonight, as a practice of imagination, I've written a short story for you that I will now read. It is the story of what would have happened if Buddhist miracles, like the ones described in the Lotus Sutra, had stopped the violence of 9/11, 2001. I have applied a bit of the wonderful style of the Lotus Sutra to my story. And I hope you don't think that I'm making fun of the language of the Lotus Sutra, if you happen to know something about it, because I truly love the way that things are stated in the ancient text, at least in the translations that I've found. So I'm going to read you my story now. I think I'll have a drink of water. So this is the end of 9/11 Sutra. After the planes left Logan Airport and the hijackers announced their lethal intentions, the passengers and crew were filled with the fear of death. They cried and prayed, and some of them planned to fight and kill the hijackers. There was nothing in the plane except fear of death, violence for the hijackers, and a way to meet their God in a martyr's fiery glory. Then suddenly, at about 20,000 feet, swirling clouds enveloped the planes. The passengers, in total amazement, could see shimmering dragons swooping and darting between the white puffs, the dazzling blue September sky and the beams of blinding sunlight. These mystical dragons embodied supreme wisdom and joyful awareness. They took hold of the planes like a mother lifting her newborn from a cradle. The engine stopped, along with the fear and violent actions. Everyone on the planes sat silently in meditation, achieving a state of serenity that they had never experienced before. The clouds became soft cotton cushions, and the dragon slowly lowered the planes onto the runway at Newark Airport. The dragons then began spectacular swirling dances and transformed into a lavish golden temple that rested peacefully on the runway. The emergency workers, police, and first responders brought buses and rescue equipment, but none of these were needed as the passengers, crew, and the hijackers walked serenely down the stairways. They were all smiling with tears running down their cheeks. The captain of American Airlines Flight 11 spoke for the passengers and crew. Our fear of death, along with our beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, have been finally exposed. During our encounter, we can now see the causes and conditions that create suffering, and we vow to study the scriptures, receive the precepts, and aspire to perfect and complete enlightenment. Then, the leader of the hijackers spoke. Our longing for death, along with our beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, have been finally exposed. During our encounter, we can now see the causes and conditions that create suffering, and we vow to study the scriptures, receive the precepts, and aspire to perfect and complete enlightenment. At that moment, a vast, glittering light from the east illuminated the Golden Temple, Newark Airport, and all of New Jersey. The temple gates opened and hundreds of thousands and millions of enlightened beings emerged, as many as there are sands in 11 Ganges rivers. Pink rose petals fell from the blue September sky as unseen bells rang. The enlightened beings with all the capabilities of existing in all places at once were led by Shakyamuni Buddha, along with Jesus Christ, the Prophet Muhammad, the Prophet Moses, the god Indra, hundreds of Hindu deities, along with high priests, nuns, and lay teachers from every faith. There were also hundreds of Latter-day Sages, including Dogen Zenji, Mahatma Gandhi, and Martin Luther King, among others. Manju Shri, the Bodhisattva of wisdom, spoke on their behalf. We, the great sages, models of peace, understanding, and perseverance, on this day, September 11th, 2001, in the midst of great sorrow and real joy, have demonstrated and brought forth peace, forever moving forward and never moving back. Our lives are precious, fragile, and miraculous, and not one moment can be spent creating harm. Within the Great Way, there is no separation, no beginning, and no end. So it is thus. These words were miraculously and subtly heard in the minds of all the world's leaders, including President George Bush and all the members of his cabinet. Then, Bodhisattva Manju Shri produced a wish-fulfilling jewel from which beams of light transported George Bush and all the members of his cabinet to the assembly at Newark Airport. Then George Bush, speaking for all the members of his cabinet, said to the great assembly, I, President George W. Bush, and all the members of my cabinet, upon hearing and seeing the great assembly of sages and saints, and witnessing the averting of disaster on this day, we hereby vow to become monks and nuns, and to study the scriptures, receive the precepts, and aspire to perfect and complete enlightenment. The assembled enlightened beings in attendance all smiled. The family members of the passengers now ran to hug their loved ones as tears of joy rained down. Suddenly, the Bodhisattva Shariputra, who had been memorizing all that had been said, bowed and asked a question to Manju Shri. Great King of Wisdom, if George Bush and all the members of his cabinet have become monks or nuns of the Great Way, who will lead the United States government? Then Bodhisattva Manju Shri produced the wish-fulfilling jewel from which beams of light transported Al Gore to the front of the assembly. Al Gore bowed deeply and then said, I, Al Gore, vow to lead the country ruled by the people and guided by generosity, wisdom, and compassion. At that moment, there was a clatter of gongs and blasts of trumpets that had not been heard before. The Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara appeared. She bowed and said, I am Avalokiteshvara, the one who hears the cries and suffering of the world. With my 1,000 eyes and 1,000 hands, each one holding a tool of assistance, I will guide Al Gore and all those who know that through meditation and non-separation, we can completely relieve misfortune and pain. Then the Bodhisattva Shariputra, who had been memorizing all that had been said, bowed and asked a question to Avalokiteshvara. Oh, great Avalokiteshvara, is there a word, an unsurpassable mantra, or an ultimate truth that will bring all beings to perfect and complete enlightenment? Then, with sweet endearment, Avalokiteshvara answered, O Shariputra, form is no other than emptiness. Emptiness no other than form. Form is exactly emptiness, and emptiness exactly form. So at that moment, 9/11 came to an end. Then the spiritual world and the real world were united beyond any doubt. Those who did meditation, followed the precepts, and studied the Dharma were all destined for perfect and complete enlightenment. Written and read by Musho in Catskill, New York on September 11th, the year 2025. Thank you for listening, and may your life go well.